Welcome and thank you for standing by. Currently, all participants are in a listen-only mode. Today's webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be posted publicly. If you have any objections, you may disconnect at this time. Now I'd like to turn the call over to your host for today, Ryan Riccardi.
Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Ryan Riccardi, and I'm a statistician with the American Community Survey Office at the U.S. Census Bureau. With me today is Matt Streeter, the Chief of the American Housing Survey Branch. This webinar is titled Comparing the American Community Survey to the American Housing Survey. I'd like to remind you that today's webinar is being recorded. If you would like to follow along with our webinar today, we have posted the slides online, available at the link you see at the bottom of this slide. The link to the slides is also posted in the chat. A recording and transcript will be posted on our website within the next few days at the same link. If you have any questions during the webinar, please post them in our Q&A section, and one of our team members will try their best to respond to you as quickly as possible. So before I dive into our data, let's start with a quick overview about the U.S. Census Bureau as a whole. And yes, we do more than just count people. So the Census Bureau is the largest of 13 primary federal government statistical agencies. And while most people are familiar with the decennial census that happens every 10 years, we also conduct more than 130 censuses and surveys of households and businesses across the nation each year. This includes the American Community Survey, the American Housing Survey, and more than 30 other household surveys. There are also over 60 economic programs. Of these, the economic census is the biggest and most comprehensive. There's also information on our nation's public sector provided through the Census of Governments. The Census Bureau's mission is to serve as the nation's leading provider of quality data about its people and economy. And our goal is to provide the best mix of timeliness, relevancy, quality, and cost for the data we collect and services we provide. So let's now go over today's agenda. The first part of today's webinar, I will be going over the basics of the American Community Survey, or ACS, and I'll be going over how the data are collected, the topics included, and the geographies covered. I will review some ACS resources for learning more. Then I will conduct a live demonstration wherein I access ACS data through one of our platforms. After that, I will turn the presentation over to my colleague, Matt Streeter, who will discuss the American Housing Survey. Matt will also conduct a live demonstration of how to access AHS data. Next, Matt and I will discuss the similarities and differences between ACS and AHS. We will provide you with suggestions of when to use each survey. And I'll conclude this webinar by providing you with ways to stay in touch. So to begin, the ACS is on the leading edge of survey design, continuous improvement, and data quality. It is the nation's most current, reliable, and accessible data source for local statistics on critical planning topics. The survey samples approximately 3.5 million housing unit addresses each year. These data are collected continuously throughout the year to produce annual social, economic, housing, and demographic estimates. The data collected through ACS helps inform the distribution of hundreds of billions of dollars in federal funds each year. Our estimates cover more than 40 topics and support more than 300 known federal uses and countless non-federal uses. So examples of just some of the programs that use Census Bureau data to determine funding include the Department of Health and Human Services in their Head Start program, and in the Department of Housing and Urban Development in the Community Development Block Grant Program and the Public Housing Capital Fund. The Census Bureau typically releases 3 different sets of data estimates from the ACS each year in the form of 1-year and 5-year period data sets, as well as one-year supplemental estimates. And I will discuss these data products in more detail on an upcoming slide. So you may be wondering, what method does the Census Bureau use to collect ACS data? The American Community Survey includes 12 monthly independent samples, and it uses 3 modes to collect data: internet, mail, and personal visit. Data collection for each sample spans 3 months, with mail and internet returns accepted at any point during this period. Now, typically for most housing units, the first phase of data collection includes an invitation for the household to respond via internet, which is mailed to the sample address. And internet data collection began in 2013. If the household does not respond by internet, a paper questionnaire is sent to the sample address for the household to complete and return by mail. Now, if the Census Bureau is unable to reach an occupant of the sample address, or if the unit had an unmailable address, the address may be selected for computer-assisted personal interviewing, known as CAPI. If the census receives an internet response or a completed paper questionnaire from the sampled address at any point in the process, we will remove the address from the data collection workload. Also, respondents are always able to call the Telephone Questionnaire Assistance, or TQA, line at any point during the 3-month data collection cycle if they have questions about the survey or if they prefer to complete the survey over the phone. So the content collected by the American Community Survey can be grouped into 4 main types of characteristics: social, demographic, economic, and housing. So taking a closer look at the type of information that each of these categories contain, on the left here are social characteristics. And these include topics such as disability status and educational attainment. The ACS also collects basic demographic characteristics such as age, sex, race, and Hispanic origin. Economic characteristics will include such topics as commuting to work, employment status, and income. And housing characteristics here on the right include both the physical and financial characteristics of housing, such as year built and home value. The great thing about the ACS is that these housing variables in orange here can be crossed with many of the social, economic, and demographic data in blue to provide a sophisticated picture of housing markets and the housing stock in various communities. And all of these topics are used to produce more than 1,000 tables for local communities each year. ACS data products are released about 1 year after the data are collected. ACS data are generally released in September the calendar year after collection as 1-year estimates, in October the calendar year after collection as 1-year supplemental estimates, and 5-year estimates are generally released in December the calendar year after collection. For example, the 1-year ACS data collected from January 1st through December 31st of 2021 were released in September of 2022. ACS 1-year estimates combine data collected over 12 months and are available for geographic areas with a population of 65,000 or more. ACS 1-year supplemental estimates are a subset of detailed tables that are available for geographic areas with a population of 20,000 or more. And ACS 5-year estimates combine data collected over 60 months, and they're available for geographic areas of all sizes, down to very small geographies like census tracts and block group. And the full detailed data release schedule for each year is available at the link you see on the slide, and you can also navigate to it by going to census.gov/ACS. Here's a county map that shows you which releases are available for different parts of the country. In this map, the dark blue counties receive 1-year, 1-year supplemental, and 5-year estimates. These are counties with a population of 65,000 or more. The lighter blue counties receive 1-year supplemental and 5-year estimates. These are counties with a population of 20,000 or more. And the yellow counties only receive 5-year estimates. These are counties with a population below 20,000. So this picture reveals geographic variation. For example, many counties in the northeastern United States meet that 65,000 population threshold. So there are lots of 1-year data available for those counties. Similarly, on the West Coast, most of the counties also get 1-year data. But as you can see in parts of the Midwest, especially in the Dakotas, stretching down to North Texas, those areas have much greater reliance on the 5-year data because those counties do not meet the 65,000 population threshold. So on the topic of geography, the ACS provides data for more geographies on an annual basis than any other household survey. There are over 13,000 geographies for 1-year estimates, 15,000 geographies for 1-year supplemental estimates, and 776,000 geographies for the 5-year estimates. The image on this slide shows some of the geographies for which ACS data are produced and the relationship between them. Lower geographic areas fit neatly within the larger areas directly connected with lines. For example, school, congressional, and state legislative districts fit neatly within states and do not cross state boundaries. However, they may cross boundaries of, say, counties or metropolitan areas. In this visualization, we can also see that the smallest geographic building block is the block group. The ACS's unique ability to report on a wide range of geographies is what gives it such a broad appeal. In general, the ACS main page is a great tool to start with if you have questions about ACS, or if you want to learn more about the survey. This page can be found by going to census.gov, selecting Surveys and Programs, and then selecting ACS. Or you can simply go to census.gov/ACS. The ACS website contains a wealth of information about the survey, data products, tools for data users, and other helpful information. From this main page, you can access a lot of other pages. Some of the pages available are the Why We Ask Each Question section, which explains the reason why we ask the question. And these pages also have the questions as they appear on the ACS questionnaire. The data tables page and data tools page, these web pages will introduce you to the most popular tools and data products with descriptions and links for each. The Guidance for Data Users page, which has a variety of resources, such as a statistical helping tool, to help you understand and manipulate ACS data. And lastly, there is the Handbooks page, which has many published guidebooks in PDF format designed to help specific types of data users. There are many different ways to access ACS data. This slide shows you some of the most common ways to do so. Note that these are ways of accessing American Community Survey data, not American Housing Survey data. So I would like to highlight just a few of them. Data.census.gov is the Census Bureau's main data dissemination platform to access Census Bureau statistics. Quick Facts provides selected statistics for all states and counties and for cities and towns with a population of 5,000 or more, using the ACS as well as other Census Bureau datasets. And the Application Programming Interface, or API, lets developers create custom apps to reach new users and makes key demographic, socioeconomic, and housing statistics more accessible than ever before. So all data tools are available from census.gov. Click the Explore Data tab from the ribbon at the top of the screen, then click on the Data Tools and Apps tab to view a comprehensive list of census tools and apps. So now I'm going to do a live demonstration of just one of these tools, data.census.gov. This is what the page looks like, but I will go to the live site now. So here is the website data.census.gov. For the best user experience, we recommend using Google Chrome, Microsoft Edge, or Mozilla Firefox, as those three browsers work best on the platform. From here, you can type directly into this search box. You can enter a table ID if you already know which table you're looking for. You can start entering a topic, like say mortgage, and it will provide you with a list of relevant tables. You can also enter any geography in here. Instead of typing, you can click advanced search underneath the text box right here. This brings you to, I'll go ahead and click that. This brings you to another view where you have filters on the left here, which you can use to apply various categories to narrow down your search. Now, for the purposes of this demonstration, I already know which table I want to share with you all. So I'm going to go ahead and enter it directly into the search box at the top here. Now, I want to show you data profile DP04 selected housing characteristics for Ann Arbor, Michigan. So to do that, I will go ahead and start typing DP04, and then you can see in the type ahead here, it already knows what I'm looking for. So I'll go ahead and click that. And by clicking that, it pulls up DP04 in our window. And we can browse, you can browse through it to see everything that it contains. Now it's our data profile, so it contains quite a lot of information. This particular one contains a wide swath of housing data, and it is the most detailed housing table that we have for the ACS. Now, a lot of this data exists separately in different tables, but DP04 selected housing characteristics has a lot of the popular housing data aggregated in one place. So right now, this table, as you can see, is set for the entire United States. But I mentioned earlier, I was looking for specifically the city of Ann Arbor, Michigan. So to get this same table for Ann Arbor, I would click geography on the left here. And that brings us to the window that allows you to select which geography you'd like, in which case said Ann Arbor. And the Census Bureau, we call cities places. So I will go ahead and click place here under most commonly used geographies. And then it's pretty intuitive from this point. It's going to ask you for the state. In our case, it'll be Michigan. So I'll click Michigan. And then from here, you can see all the list of cities. You also can start typing at the top. Oops. Ann Arbor City, Michigan. I'll go ahead and check that. And then I'm going to exit out of this little window that's popped up. Now you can see that once I've selected my geography, it automatically adjusts the table to be for Ann Arbor. Now you can scroll down to see all the housing data for this city. It has now been adjusted for Ann Arbor, Michigan. Now this table is currently set for 2021, which is the most recent ACS data available. You can edit the year by clicking this drop-down tab right above the ribbon of icons and beneath the table ID and title. And when you click that, you can see all of the options to change the years. And of course, if you select any of these years, let's just say I was curious to see what it looked like in 2019, right before the pandemic. I click that, and then the table has adjusted now to be for the 2019 ACS one-year estimates. You can also select multiple geographies if you would like to compare Ann Arbor with other geographies. To do that, you would go back to the left here and then follow the prompts to select more geographies. And that concludes my presentation, so I will now go back to the slides. Oops, my bad. And with that, I will turn the presentation over to Matt Streeter from the American Housing Survey.
Thanks, Ryan. 1 second here. All right, thanks, Ryan. So the American Housing Survey is one of the most comprehensive sources of housing data covering the United States. It's also one of the only surveys that is longitudinal or a panel survey that follows housing units over long periods of time. The AHS began in 1973, and it's funded by the Department of Housing and Urban Development, with Census administering the AHS on HUD's behalf. The AHS primarily releases its data in two forms, in the form of tables in its table creator tool, which I'll be demoing in a few minutes, and also in the form of its microdata in its public use files. The AHS also is used in a lot of important research projects and a lot of important reports, such as the Worst Case Housing Needs Report, which HUD prepares and delivers to Congress. The AHS is made up of a sample of housing units. This can include both occupied and vacant housing units, and it's conducted every 2 years in odd-numbered years. There's an additional 20 metro areas that are split into two groups of 10 that are interviewed every other cycle. As I mentioned earlier, the AHS is longitudinal. So the most recent redesign of the AHS took place in 2015 when a new sample was drawn. And since then, the survey has been visiting the same housing units over time, regardless of whether the household turned over. This is important because it allows us to study changes in the housing stock. So the AHS sample is made up of about 100,000 housing units in the national sample. And then there's roughly around 30,000 additional housing units in the rotating metro sample each cycle. In our most recent survey year in 2021, this resulted in about 84,000 total interviews. For the data collection, AHS is collected from May through September in odd-numbered years. You'll notice that this is a little bit different from ACS, which collects throughout the entire year. AHS is also fully interviewer administered. So Census actually trains professional field interviewers who use an electronic instrument to collect AHS by phone or by personal visit. And you'll notice that this is a little bit different. As Ryan mentioned earlier, the ACS is multi-mode and goes into, does have self-response for mail out and internet. The AHS, when data collection is finished, Census processes and reviews the data, and then Census and HUD releases the AHS estimates in the next year. So for 2023, we're starting collection around May of this year, and we expect most of AHS data for 23 to be released roughly by fall of 2024. The AHS is representative at the division and region level. So if you're not familiar with those, this graphic on the slide actually shows how those are defined. They're basically set up as collections of states. The AHS is also designed to represent the 15 highest populated metro areas and the additional 20 metro areas I mentioned earlier. You'll find that AHS also can make some state level estimates, though this doesn't include all 50 states. But when I go into the table creator demo in a few minutes, I'll show how you can pull up state level estimates in AHS. The core content, or the AHS is split up into both core and rotating topical content. So the core content is in every survey cycle, and it doesn't change very often. So you can compare them from year to year. The rotating topical content is decided by HUD, and it rotates a number of new subject matter areas in and out of the survey each cycle. The AHS is flexible, so this is a big strength of the AHS because it allows for the survey to cover a lot of different topics without necessarily increasing respondent burden too much. So going quickly into the core content covered in AHS, the AHS does collect a lot of the basic demographic characteristics of household members in the survey, including age, race, and sex. Like ACS, the AHS also includes a number of basic housing statistics, such as the owner-renter status and the year the unit was built. AHS does go into more detail on structural characteristics, including information on the size of the unit and amenities in the unit. And then another strength of the AHS is its housing quality data. So AHS collects a wealth of information about equipment breakdowns, building conditions, along with health and safety hazards in the home, such as mold and mice and cockroaches. Another core topic of the AHS are costs and affordability. A lot of these are collected in common with the ACS, but the AHS allows going into a little bit more granular detail with certain costs such as remodeling and upkeep costs. A couple other core topics on the AHS I wanted to share. Neighborhood quality. So the AHS does ask the respondent about their opinion of the surrounding neighborhood and other amenities included in the neighborhood. And then AHS also asks additional information from household members who've moved since within 2 years of the interview. They're asked for information about why they moved and more about where they moved from. So as I mentioned earlier, the AHS has a wealth of topical content. This slide lists all the topical areas that were included since 2015 and the years that they were present. You'll notice that there are a whole lot of different types of content that's covered here. Everything from pets to home accessibility to food security. So there's a lot of very important topics that are covered in this section of the survey. I've included a few links here. So this includes a link to the AHS main site, along with some additional tutorial videos and pre-recorded webinars to assist anyone interested in using AHS data. I did want to highlight in particular the interactive electronic codebook. I won't have time to demo it here today, but even if you don't plan on using the AHS microdata, I highly suggest anyone interested in learning more checking this out. It's basically a list of all the AHS variables with a lot of information about them going back to 1973. You can filter it in a lot of different ways. It's searchable, so it's a great way to get familiar with the content that's covered in the AHS. And now I'll go into the demo. So you can use this QR code along with or the link, and it should bring you to the AHS table creator site that I'm about to show. And let's see here. Okay, so so this is the AHS table creator tool. This is the default page here. You can go to the select area menu here. And this is where, as I mentioned earlier, you can choose the states that are available in the AHS or any particular metro area you're interested in. You can also select the year. AHS does go back to the 1973, but tables before 2011 are on the website in Excel or PDF format. So this tool is for 2011 and later data. The AHS content is organized into sets of tables, which you can see here. The top maybe 3/4 of these tables are core tables, and then towards the bottom there are topical tables that include the topical content for that year. So I did want to highlight that this is a dynamic list. So I have 2021 selected right now, so you can see wildfire risk and pets here. But if I went back and changed to 2019 and pulled up this list, you'll see a lot of the same core tables. But when you scroll down, you see home accessibility and food security, which were topicals in 2019. So when you're checking this out, you might want to decide on which year you want and look at what's available there. So I'm going to use one of our more popular tables here on household pets. So I'm just going to start here and then hit Get Table. And you can see pulls up the table here. One thing I wanted to highlight, whenever you pull up a table, there's a link to subject definitions, which you can go to for more information about the content. As I mentioned earlier, all of AHS is at the housing unit level. And then all the table creator estimates are in thousands. So this basically is 128,504,000 occupied housing units. And then of those, 63,775,000 around have pets in the household. And you can scroll down and see the different makeup of pets by type that are collected. Now, if I wanted to get margin of error, you can go to the view and then switch to estimates and margin of error and hit Get Table. And then that shows the margin of error in thousands, so 388,000 here. And then another thing that I was going to show, there's a number of menus here to add columns to cross this by different variables. So I'm going to show an example of if I wanted to break this down by owners and renters, then I can click tenure here on this variable 1 column, and I'm going to just switch back to estimates. And you'll see that this includes the total and then the owner and renter estimates. I can also, if I wanted to hide columns, say I don't want to show the total, I can click this columns button, click this, and this shows the owner and renter estimates here, along with the totals for pet ownership. Another feature I wanted to point out, it's handy to click this download current display. You can click on this and export any table you have selected into Excel or CSV format. This is particularly helpful if you have a lot of columns, because you can really, when you drill down in this tool, you can add a lot of columns in AHS tables here. So sometimes it's easier to see them in Excel. You can also, use your own formulas to try to maybe put this in terms of percentages and mess with the data in that way. And then additionally, at the bottom left here, if you want to see more features in Table Creator, there's a video, there's more information on the tutorial here. So if I wanted to reset my selections, I can just hit reset here, and it'll go back to the default page, and then I can just go back and add my filters again. So I'm going to move back to presentation here. So now that you've seen an overview of ACS and AHS, I'm going to go into just highlighting some of the similarities and differences you may have noticed from what we've seen so far. So both surveys produce housing unit level estimates. They both contain basic housing data, such as structure type and value of the home. And both surveys, both ACS and AHS, collect similar demographic characteristics of household members, such as age, race, and sex. ACS and AHS also both release tables and microdata, but as you've seen, you can get to those in different locations, and there's a little bit differences in the format, but they both have those two products. Moving to differences between the two surveys, AHS is collected every 2 years, while ACS is annual. As we mentioned earlier, the data collection methods, AHS is fully interviewer administered, while ACS is multi-mode. Another important difference is the sample size. So ACS, as Ryan mentioned, has about 3.5 million addresses in its sample each year, while AHS has about 100,000. So this really drives the next difference with geography. So ACS allows you to go into more granular detail, a more local geographic level than the AHS. And that's because of that increased sample size. So for the level of estimates, another thing I hadn't mentioned yet, both ACS and AHS do produce housing unit level estimates, but ACS also produces person level estimates. AHS, all AHS data, even though we collect data on everybody in the household, they're rolled up to the housing unit or household level. And the other thing I wanted to highlight, there is a bit of a trade-off here. So as to unique content, the way I like to think about it, the ACS has a much larger sample size, but the AHS has a much larger questionnaire. So there are a few things that are unique to the ACS, like occupation and employment statistics, but the AHS has a lot more variables. So there's a little bit of a trade-off between sample size and content there. And that'll lead to our next section here. That's a good segue to Ryan. I'll hand it back to him to talk about when to use each survey.
Let me share my screen. One moment. Okay, thank you, Matt. All right, so you may be wondering, in which cases would it be best to use each survey? So now I'm going to highlight different instances where one survey may be a better match than the other. So to begin, if you want to understand the characteristics of the people who live in housing units, the ACS is the better choice of the two. The ACS produces these population characteristics for the many different geographies like I mentioned earlier. However, if you're looking for basic housing units characteristics, you can use either ACS or AHS. But if you would like detailed estimates on housing quality, neighborhood characteristics, mortgage information, and those rotating topics that Matt mentioned earlier, the AHS would be most suitable. Additionally, if you want longitudinal data, you would go with the AHS, as the AHS employs a panel methodology and follows households throughout time. The AHS has data going back to 1973, the year that it started. The ACS, on the other hand, began in 2005, so there's a lot less historical ACS data compared to AHS data. Another factor to keep in mind is that the AHS is available every 2 years, whereas the ACS is available every year. So if you're looking for a particular year, you'll want to check if the AHS was conducted that year. Or if you're looking for consecutive yearly data, then you'll want to use the ACS. So as we begin to wrap up this webinar, I'm going to provide you with some more resources for learning more and for staying in touch with us. I want to inform you there is a group specifically for users of American Community Survey data. It's known simply as the ACS Data Users Group. The purpose of the ACS Data Users Group is to improve understanding of the value and utility of ACS data, as well as to promote information sharing among data users about key ACS data issues and applications. The ACS Data Users Group includes a website and an online community that has over 4,000 members. The website contains information such as previous conference presentations and archived webinars. This online community is a site where members can share messages, materials, and announcements related to the ACS. And Census Bureau staff are also members and share program updates here. We also host the ACS Data User Conferences, typically every 2 years, and the next one is coming up. It will be held May 16th through 18th in a hybrid virtual and in-person format. The in-person component will be held in Washington, D.C. The conferences are open to the public, and information is posted in advance on the Data Users Group website. Membership to the Data Users Group is free and open to everyone. To learn more, go to acsdatacommunity.prb.org, listed at the bottom of the screen. So in closing, I encourage you to connect with us directly. If you have questions, you can reach us at the phone numbers listed here. You can also sign up for and manage alerts on the ACS or the AHS under the email alerts section you see on the slide. The ACS and AHS also have an email address to help support data users who may have questions. And for the ACS, that email address is acso.users.support@census.gov. And for the AHS, that email address is ahsn@census.gov. You can also check out our websites as well as other important information through the information displayed on this slide. And with that, I want to thank you all for joining us on this webinar today. Again, a recording of today's webinar, along with the slides and a transcript, will be posted online shortly. Thank you for joining us.
This is Gretchen. We're getting a lot of questions for Matt about the housing survey. And since we have a little bit of time, I was wondering, Matt, if it's okay if we ask you a few through audio.
Yeah, sure.
All right. Will there be additional questions regarding evictions as related to COVID for the survey this year? I think they're asking about the American Housing Survey, if you're going to be asking about evictions in your next round.
Yeah, if I can get back to you on that answer. Are you asking about 2023 or 2025?
So I'm not sure what they were specifying, but I'm guessing they're just curious if that's going to come up with the pandemic.
I can, if anyone has particular follow-up, I can feel free to email the AHSN at census.gov, and we can follow up with more specific answers.
We actually got some clarifying information. It says 2023 regarding law change reducing evictions.
Okay, gotcha. So yeah, the AHS does collect some information about whether the occupants of the current home were forced to move from their previous residence. So there's a little bit of information about that, but I'd be hesitant to say that that's going to be like a full eviction estimate in 23. But I can think of I can send out a more detailed answer if they want to follow up with me individually.
Okay, I think I know the answer to this one. Does the American Housing Survey, is it available using the Census API?
No.
No, that's what I was thinking. Someone's asking if you're interested in showing poverty by house type, by race, and gender. So I'm thinking the housing survey doesn't include poverty. Is that right?
So it does. So it does collect income information. I should have mentioned that, but so you can get at households that are below the poverty level in AHS. So you could do something like that. Yeah.
Okay, but probably if you wanted it for anything kind of beyond the geographies available in your survey, the ACS might be the better source for that.
Yeah, and depending on what they were doing, they would need to go into the table creator, or they would need to go into the microdata potentially on the AHS side.
All right. Looks like I think we have everything else. I think Kevin was able to get caught up, but you definitely were a popular topic. Let me ask one more. This will be the final one. Is mortgage information available?
Yep, AHS does have mortgage information. It's there's a whole data set that's released that's a mortgage level file, and there are 2 tables that cover mortgage data.
Okay.
There's also one more. What are the
okay.
criteria for masking data for AHS data?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
What are the criteria for masking data for AHS data?
Oh, so like suppressions. So the AHS does have, I have to go to see how we would explain that, but basically the AHS does have to adhere to the Disclosure Review Board guidelines. And so there are certain requirements where, we have to mask data that are too small. There are also some quality suppressions though in the AHS tables. So like if it's below a certain quality level, they are currently suppressed.
Possible, Matt, that within a metro area like DC that you can separate out, I'm guessing DC like the city versus like the surrounding metro area, or is it all the metro area together?
Yeah, so the table creator tool does actually have more geography than what I was showing in the presentation. So when you go down to the filters, you can separate things a little bit further. I usually advise caution when dividing it up too much because the sample isn't really designed to make too granular a geography estimate. And so I'd advise if you're drilling down that low to add the margin of error to get a feel for the quality of what you're looking at.
Got it. So for folks, if you have any additional questions, just make sure to check out the contact information on the screen. Matt, the housing survey was clearly very popular today.
Always love to answer questions. So yeah, definitely anyone feel free to email us at ahsn@census.gov. And we'd be happy to answer your questions.
Great, that's the wrap for questions from Q&A. Thanks.
Okay. This concludes today's webinar. Thank you for your participation. You may disconnect at this time.